Testing. Okay, great. Thank you, Tim. Okay, good morning, guys. We've had a little bit of a run up overnight and a rundown into the morning. Yesterday, if you look, the 1804 to 1806 on the trade plan yesterday. Let me see if I can jump to that really quick. And that was right here. And let me make sure I've got the right. Nope. Yes, I do. So if you look, yesterday we had 1804 to 1806. That was initial resistance, and this area, importantly, these are my internal notes. This was a 62% retrace. This area, in general, all of this was 62% retrace from the former highs all the way down to the lows. And it makes perfect sense that we're rejecting out of that area. So let me switch over here real quick to today's chart. So normally, when you get a retrace like that from the highs to the lows, you would expect rejection and somewhat of a retrace back down. And so usually when you get to a top or an area that's a top, 3 to 4 days later we'll travel back down to wherever the range low is going to be, at least for this period, temporarily. So let's just translate that into how we're going to trade today. So clearly, if we come down and we open in this area, this 1797.50, that is going to be just above Monday's high, Globex low, gap fill. There's a lot helping us here. Importantly, and it actually sets up a pretty easy day for us. Why? If we get below this 1795 and a quarter, 1793 and a quarter area, right? It opens us up for a run down and a test into initial support. So this is the trade I'm looking for at some point today. May not happen. However, I think it gives us the strongest possibility of a nice trade. I'm cautious in taking longs or pressing longs for anything more than a 2-point rotation above the white zone. We could certainly go all the way up to 1810, 1812 area. However, we are in danger of getting rejection, just like we had this morning pre-market. So this is what the upside scenario would look like. So let me go through that. Actually, let me go through the basics first. What I expect at each zone, regardless of rotation, is a pause. In that pause, I would normally look for a rotation down of anywhere from 2 to 4 points. Normally, under most circumstances, even on trend days up, I look for and expect that move down. Now, with trend days up, obviously that becomes more difficult, but that's the most difficult environment to get a counter trade off of, and I still expect that rotation. So that being said, with a proper stretch, and today, clearly based on overnight, we're not going to have a balanced day, or it doesn't look like we're going to have a balanced day, at least initially. We have econ at 9 a.m., and we have a Fed speaker this morning. And let me see who the speaker is. It is Plosser speaks, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I have no idea how much weight that person carries or not, but at 9 a.m., he will be speaking. Obviously, any mention of taper or economic strength will bring selling into the market. So, and then we also have an econ number. Let me make sure that is correct. We do have a jobs report at 9 a.m. as well. That's Central Time, 10 Eastern. Okay, so let's go into the scenarios. We open 97.50. Assuming we get a rejection out of the white zone, out of the gate, I would look for a test of this 1800 area. I would look for a 6 to actually a 7 to 8 point rotation. Now I'm going to modify that a little bit. On the upside here, initially I'm going to look for a 6-point rotation. On the downside, I'm looking for a 7-point rotation. The reason why is I think we have a greater chance of a move to the downside than we do to the upside. And I think in this area, everything from this area all the way up to 1810, I think we have a stronger chance of rejection in this area, and that we'll meet more sellers if we can stay up here and drive up here. So that being said, on the upside, if we come into 1795, on the upside, I'm looking for 1801 would be a 6-point rotation up, right? So where would I get trade location? Right here at the back of the zone. Now, what I didn't publish and I will, by the way, publish the zones here in just a moment. Actually, for those of you who don't have it, let me publish it real quick. And I will put it out on StockTwits. It should go over to Twitter fairly quickly. Hold on one sec. I just posted that to StockTwits and Twitter, so y'all should be able to get that momentarily and have that in front of you. So, that being said, on the upside again, since I need a 6-point rotation up, for anyone who's not taking an aggressive trade, right, I would look for trade placement at the back of the zone. Now, if we push further back in, right, if we push down to 1793, that'll give us more towards the front of the zone. So what I'm looking for is from the swing low, what the rotation is on the upside. If we get up above this 1800, what you have to watch out for today, and I'm going to pull this down, is all these zones from really 1800 almost all the way up to 1820. If you recall, and I'll show on the volume profile real quick so that we can see. And the only thing I'm going to point out at this point on the volume profile is that we are back into this area right here, right in here. And this was Chop City last time we got up into this area, right? Back over here. Now we sliced through it fairly convincingly, and all of this was poorly auctioned all the way up to 1820. And that is why, when we look back at the zones, that is why all these zones are chopped up almost 2 points apiece, maybe a little bit more, right? So how do I handle when that gets into the zone? Well, I'm going to look the exact same way that I did before. So first of all, I do expect rotation at each zone. However, if I'm trying to avoid getting run over in any of these zones or getting busted through these zones, assuming we get a short squeeze above 1800, right? The way you measure that is, let's say we get into initial resistance and we don't reject out of it, or we do one of these jobs where we come a little bit below and come right up and bust, right? So what I'm looking for, let's say this is 1801, 1801.50 is the swing low here. Well, I'm going to look for 6 points higher in order to find my rotation. That puts me at 1807 to 1808 for my next trade. Same thing, if we base in this level right here, right, at 1806, and we don't break below, in other words, it stays 25 minutes in the zone, I'm going to look for 6 points higher before I take a trade, which will put me back at 1812. Hopefully that explains how I'm going to use these zones and avoid having to take a trade every 2 points, which I don't want to do, right? I want to measure this properly. And again, if the base is right here, we want to look at 6 points higher up here. That is how I'll manage that. The other way to look at it is, in order to avoid getting into a situation where a zone gets busted, is simply to look and say, if we pause here or we trade here, we want to take every other zone in this area, and I'm willing to give up the zone in between so that I'm sure that I'm getting a good stretch when I enter the trade. Hopefully that was very clear. So what's the first thing we're watching out for? As always, every day, we're still getting a small gap. Open drive higher, right? Usually either one very large stick of, I would say, 5 to 7 points, or a series of smaller 5-minute bars that are like this, right? With the first 5-minute bar not being traded underneath. I want to be clear on this, that if we don't get this pattern, it does not mean we can't have a trend day up. It's simply this is a giveaway, right, for quickly identifying that we're in a trend day situation, so you can modify your trade and go to your, you should have a trend day up or a trend day down trade plan that's customized to what your risk parameters are, and not what my risk parameters are, because I'm definitely more aggressive than most of my clients, right? So the first test is we've got to get below Monday's low. If we come in and reject underneath, obviously we have strength out of the white zone, and a move back up to retest the highs is certainly possible. The the other way that this might look if we're going into balance, right? We come up, we reject, we come into this area. I'd expect a rotation down if we can get a 6-point rotation. And then that's the test, right? When we come back in, if we can hold the white zone, right, I would expect a slow move back up and then a push back into Globex highs. Now, what am I watching for a reversal, assuming we hold above the white zone? Well, this time frame from 9:30 again to really 11 a.m., but particularly 9:30 to 10:30 is where I would look for a turning point, right? Why does that matter if I'm only taking 2 points? For several reasons. If I'm going to get a move down, right, and I know that we're at a turning point in the day where we could be reaching highs and or lows, right, I want to be able to find setups that would push in the direction of a potential reversal. Even on trend days down, right, we tend to get a big push somewhere out of this time frame of 4 to 6 points, which means I don't want to be overly quick to take a counter trade or to leave trailers after we've reached this point. I want to be in and out fairly quickly. So just to be clear, I expect rotation somewhere here, assuming we're going to test the white zone, which certainly looks like it's going to happen. This morning we're actually opening a tick above the white zone, which is going to make the white zone itself incredibly aggressive, right? So I'll be looking here for a trade lower. I'll be looking here for a trade lower. I'm definitely willing to take a loss. If we bust through this zone, right, I would imagine that shorts are going to get a little panicked, and I'm more likely to skip this 1806, 1808 and push for this 1810, 1812. I will take this zone. If you'll go back and look when we had the breakdown, this is where we opened and rejected out of multiple times. We had, I believe, 3 tests on what eventually began this ultimately a downtrend all the way down to the 1730 area, right? Above here, I'd be cautious on the shorts. There will be aggressive shorts piling on in this area, and they would be very squeezed above 1812. I doubt that we get that today, but you have to have a game plan for it just in case. So let's look at what the downside scenario is, since we've had such a strong rejection from above. If we can somehow manage in the next 15 minutes to open below the white zone, right, it would somehow have to get to 1790. I would expect actually rejection out of the white zone on first test, and then a move lower. That would actually set us up for a fairly nice move to the downside. So on these trades, right, I'm going to be somewhat cautious and make sure that I get a 7-point rotation on the downside. Why? I want to make sure that if we get one of these jobs where we're just barely poking out of the zone and then moving lower, again, I might be wrong about this scenario, but it's the one I'm going to be gaming. The market will let us know fairly quickly once we open whether my plan A will be in effect, right? So I want a 7-point rotation, so hopefully that sets me to the middle, to the back of the zone, so that when I get this rotation, I can get my 2 points relatively quickly and get out of this trade. Now, that being said, once I get down to initial support right down here at 1780.82, if you recall, both on the way up and previously on the way down, this 80.82 was an important area on both sides. I would expect responsive buyers here and a push back up. If we're going to end up with a balanced day, that will push us back above Monday's lows, which would set up a trap trade and push us to the other end of the range. This is certainly possible, and it would result in what we had a balanced day. If we end up with a trend day down, right, even on most down days, if we start off with the first hour or two as a downside move, most days we get a rotation back up to the upside. You have to figure most people missed this move to the upside. A lot of people were surprised by the strength of this move. I would assume there's responsive buyers from below. I would also be a strong buyer if somehow we get down here, right? On each of these zones, at initial support and below, here, 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 all of these, I will be a buyer in each and every zone on first touch, assuming I have no consolidation above the zone. I want to be clear about that. These are where I'll be looking to take my trades first time into the zone, okay? Second time, I'll be a little bit more cautious. I would not expect, at least in my trade plan, for us to trade below initial support. If we do, I still would expect that primary rotation first for my coaching clients. These are where you'd want to leave trailers out of if your trade plan, only if your trade plan calls for trailers, right? These are areas where you'd want to try to set up your counter rotations up. I would not necessarily set it up off of Monday's lows. I'd simply be willing to scalp out of that, right? The trap trades, potential trap trades for trailers are set up if we break Monday's low and recoup it, right? We come up underneath and recoup it. Or we actually trade below Globex lows, right? We come into Monday's lows, trade back above Globex low, and test higher. What is going to determine, right, the strength this morning is going to be really NQ. And if you look at NQ, even though we're only up a point on the ES, it's still trading up 7. So you'll want to have it marked off on your chart. I was not able to finish the NQ chart. I'm going to try to finish it as soon as I jump off here. But you obviously want to mark 35.96.50. Above 35.96.50 on NQ, again, we could get short squeeze coming in. And even if ES fails to either clear back above the Globex lows, depending on where we're trading, or above the overnight high, right, with NQ breaking, it can still provide a lot of support, and rotations down will be quickly snapped up, assuming NQ is pushing high. So that's been the pattern all the way through this move up, as NQ has led the entire time. I will have my eyes on it. By the same token, if I look at NQ and NQ is busting new lows, right, and let's say we're coming into areas that are important, Monday's lows and initial support. If I see this and I see NQ failing to reverse on my trailers, right, we come up, NQ starts to reverse at the same time that ES reverses, and then flips back around and starts hitting new lows. Well, you should have your stops in place anyways, and you'll just get tagged out on your trailers very quickly. So I guess what I'm saying on that is that I will be looking for NQ for strength, and what I want to see is on my trailers here is NQ lead us back up and ES to follow that back up from these levels. I think that makes sense. So that's my initial trade plan. Again, guys, the areas I'm cautious on the open, assuming how much rotation we have, I'm cautious here, and I am, with the proper rotation, willing to take a trade back here. I'm going to assume back here will give us a 6-point rotation. If it does not, based on wherever the swing low is off the open, right? If we don't get a 6-point rotation anywhere into this zone, and really I'd say within 1 point of the back of the zone, in other words, if 6 points gives us 1 point in back of the zone, it becomes a judgment call. You can either take a trade here or wait for the front of the zone here. Either way, I can tell you I will probably be taking a short from anywhere in this zone. I'll be willing to take a short. I'm willing to take a 4-point loss in here because I do think we have a strong chance of rejection given the pre-market action. Another thing to consider, multiple times through this rally, right? We've had the first hour where we pushed down significantly, and then in the afternoon, right, we have pushed all the way up. That's been a hallmark since we've been down at 1730 are these afternoon push-ups. So if you're going to trade the afternoon, be aware that this is certainly a potential, right? Don't get overly bearish at the lows. That's really my, and by the same token, right, remembering and keeping in mind where we are in the larger picture, I would not get overly bullish in this area. Resist the idea, for those of you who aren't my coaching clients. I would wait for good rotations down before I try to get a trade to the long side up here. Even in the afternoon, I'd want a good rotation down before I take a long side trade. Again, I think you're pushing it if you're taking longs anywhere above, even above the white zone. I think you're pushing it if you're trying to get a big swing up into here. There's a lot of resistance all through this area, and the market is very stretched from the 1830 lows, right? We have a 60-point stretch. Go back and look at what the stretches have been on the up and down from the past couple of weeks, and 60 points is a pretty good point where we've been getting counter rotations after that. So anyone wants to drop off, that's pretty much my executive summary for the morning. I don't want anyone to feel like they're getting confused or making this more complicated than it is. It's simple at its core. At each zone, I expect a pause and a counter rotation. That's what I'm looking for. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. All of this, all of the trap trade information, all of the, I expect responsive buyers from below or responsive sellers from above at a particular time frame. Those are for people who are trying to set up larger time frame trades. but at its core, it's very simple, just like yesterday, right? First touch of the zone above, we got rejection. First touch of the zone below, we got rejection back up. And each of the zones above, even after market last night, produced a counter rotation. And certainly we saw that in the 1802, out of this 1804.50 this morning. And at any rate, that's it. That's how simple it gets. So let's go over and look at the volume profile real quick. Okay, quite simply. This is a 24-hour chart. As you can see right here, I'm going to mark this off. Pretty simple. Overnight, this was the prior high. We breached that prior high at 1801.50 on a 24-hour basis, and we've trapped a few traders up here and rejected below. That's a classic setup. You want to see where that occurred prior to that? Let me demonstrate that for you here real quick. Exact same scenario, 3 times in a row. History, it doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. 1, push back below. 2, we ended up with a balanced day, but it ended up pushing back below. And then the third time, finally, after it tested 3 times, the attempted reject failed to do so. We finally got the close above 1801.50, and that's what opened the door to the move higher. So you'd expect a mirror move or a potential mirror move when we got up here. And again, a reject lower. It doesn't mean we're coming all the way back down here. This is still, this 1770 is a potential range low, right? By the same token, if we get above this 1801.50 and we hold, it does open the move back to the prior, to the range above it. This would be the low of the range above, which would be 1820. It'd be surprising to get that move up here, but remember, October, November, December, we got pretty strong pushes, and that could happen again. I don't think it will, but it could. Let me see what else I think is important here. So let's look at what it looks like on the daily, but the 24-hour pretty much tells the story there. Oh, one more thing. You'll notice when we broke down over here that we're still one-timing all the way through this process, right? You can see that we failed to penetrate below the prior day's low. Bigger picture, we really don't have a new move to the downside until we penetrate below yesterday's low. If we don't penetrate below yesterday's low, we're still one-timing. We can come down like this, push into the prior day zone, and then push back up, right? So one-timing doesn't end until we trade below. It doesn't even have to close below. Just trade below the prior day's low. You'll notice on all of these moves down, when these moves down started, right, they all occurred when we broke one timing, and you had plenty of time to get in on the downside, so you don't have to press it. Now, we could get a long liquidation like this, but they're rare, right, the long liquidations, and usually they open with an open drive lower. One more thing, be cognitive that that open drive lower could start at that 9 a.m. when the Fed speaker speaks, or when the econ data comes out, right? It essentially becomes a delayed open. We chop around till 9 a.m. We get the econ, we get the open drive there. So you kind of have to reset and go, okay, we haven't, technically if you get that, it would be as if we had an open drive lower and the market were opening at 9 a.m. Be cognizant of that. Also watch your tick, right? If the tick on the NYSE is predominantly negative and can't get above 0 or sustain above 0, that's another indication of trend day down. Conversely, if we get a day like yesterday where we balanced all day, the balance, the tick stayed plus 500, minus 500 all day. That is indicative of balance. And after 9:30 a.m., if you see us go into that plus 500, minus 500, you know immediately, hey, potential chop, slower, grindier, more moves if we stay plus 500, minus 500 after 9:30. So be cognizant of that because we certainly could just have a second balance day, right? Let's go look at NQ really quick. Okay, excuse me, that's a 24-hour on NQ. I want to look at the daily there since it carries much more weight. Okay, as you can see, we have traded right to the bottom of this previous, what ended up being an island reversal, right in here. 3580 up to, let's just call it 3590-ish area. And if you look where our highs are today, where we pushed 3596. So that would put us right about here, right? Okay, so we've pushed into this zone. Obviously, how would we know that we're rejecting this zone? Well, first of all, we have to get below this 3577.50. First clue, right, that we can start this move back to the downside. Secondly, look at how strong this move is up. We have open gaps here, and we have open gaps here. Those tend to be areas that provide responsive buyers, right? So those are areas that I would be looking into to find a bigger picture reversal today if we get there, and we may not, right? By the same token, first of all, obviously we have to get below prior day's low in order to have any indication that we're going to stop one timing. NQ can be pretty interesting, right? You can get a reversal off of a move up like this, right? Where we've traded all the way down. Then we opened here, we traded all the way down. Then by the end of the day, we pushed all the way back up. I can't tell you how cautious I am in the afternoon that we could get a push all the way back up on this thing. If you'll notice, out of all these down days that we had in this down move, we had one day where NQ closed at the lows. Every other day, the closes were up either near the high or at the midpoint. I stand corrected, 2 days where we closed near the low, right? Every other day pushes back up towards the midpoint. Anyways, we're about to open. That's my scenario. Don't forget to take a look at your trend lines. Importantly, respect your stops. Don't push past it. I've heard from a lot of people getting smoked because they're trading past their stops. They're over trading. All you need is 1 or 2 trades to build your trading account. I'm telling you, I see it with client after client. 1 or 2 trades that make money. Respect your day stop. Respect your individual stop. And give the trade the proper amount of room that it needs in order to make money. Anyways, guys, that's it. I'm done. You can reach me at tradeandperform@gmail.com, over Twitter or StockTwits. I hope everyone has a great day and makes a ton of money. We'll talk to you later, guys. Oh, by the way, AG, you asked if there's any zones above 1804.50. There are, and I will publish that shortly after the open if I think it's necessary. At this point, I don't think we're going to get above, if we get above 1800, we trade to 1801, I'll publish those. Have a great day, guys.